She stood frozen at the grand doorway of the Whitmore mansion. Marble floors, chandeliers like frozen rain, and a silence heavy enough to make her heartbeat sound loud. Everyone's eyes were on her. Her fiancé, his mother, the house staff, and at the far end of the golden dining hall, him, the billionaire she was supposed to impress. The man whose approval could decide her entire future. But when their eyes met, the room shifted. His expression, not confusion, not anger, but something stranger. Recognition. Her breath caught. Because sitting at the head of the table, dressed in a tailored navy suit, was the same man she'd given her lunch to outside the train station barely an hour ago. He looked different now, clean, polished, powerful. But those eyes, she'd know them anywhere. The same tired, weathered eyes of the shivering veteran who had thanked her with a trembling voice. And now, those same eyes were watching her, like he was seeing her all over again, for a very different reason. Yeah. This wasn't exactly the first impression she had imagined, because how do you even begin a conversation with your future father-in-law when the last time you met? He was sitting on the sidewalk eating your turkey sandwich. But let's rewind. Before the chandeliers, before the shock, before the most awkward dinner in history. Let's go back to that morning, to the girl who thought she had everything figured out. Her name was Maya Brooks, 31, public school teacher, the kind of person who still said "excuse me" to mannequins when she bumped into them. Kind-hearted, punctual, and maybe just a little too eager to please. Today was supposed to be perfect, a defining day. She was finally meeting her fiancé's father, Richard Whitmore, the real estate billionaire whose name sat on half the skyscrapers in Chicago, and Maya had done everything right. Perfect outfit, perfect hair, perfect speech, rehearsed in the mirror 3 times. She even Googled how to impress billionaires. Don't laugh, and bookmarked 2 articles. Everything was under control. Until life decided to test her, because just as she stepped off the train, coffee in one hand and nerves in the other, she saw him, an older man sitting on the curb in the cold, clutching a cardboard sign. Army vet, hungry, just need a chance. She could have walked past. Most people did. But that's the thing about Maya. She never learned how to look away. So she stopped, took off her scarf, gave him her lunch, asked if he was okay. She didn't know she was changing her own story, because in less than an hour, that man would be waiting for her, not on the sidewalk, but at the head of the table. Welcome, story lovers! From where are you watching? Drop your city name in the comments. Let's see how far our story travels tonight. Maya Brooks didn't come from money. She came from small-town Ohio, the kind of place where Friday night football was religion and the local diner waitress knew everyone's heartbreak by name. Her childhood smelled like fresh-cut grass, chalk dust, and her mother's coffee brewing before sunrise. Her father, Henry Brooks, worked double shifts at the factory and still found time to fix neighbors' fences for free. Her mom, Elaine, was a nurse, patient, quiet, and endlessly kind. They weren't rich, but they were proud. The kind of family who believed that good people got good things, eventually, if they just worked hard enough. Maya believed it too. From a young age, she wanted to teach. Not because it paid well, it didn't, but because she wanted to be for others what her teachers were for her. Proof that kindness could change a life. She was the kind of girl who color-coded her notebooks and tutored classmates who made fun of her later. The kind who thought compassion was a superpower, and for a while, life agreed. She earned a scholarship to a state university, graduated top of her class, and got her first teaching job at a public school in Chicago. That first year felt like a dream. She lived in a tiny apartment, surviving on ramen and caffeine, but every morning when she walked into her classroom and heard, "Good morning, Miss Brooks," it felt like she had everything she ever wanted. Then, life started testing the limits of her optimism. Her mom got sick. At first, it was small: fatigue, coughs, forgetfulness. Then came the diagnosis: early onset Alzheimer's. It was the kind of news that steals your air before you even know you've stopped breathing. Maya was 24, too young to carry a life that heavy, but too compassionate to ever set it down. She sent half her paycheck home every month, then all of it. When medical bills piled up, she started tutoring on weekends, grading papers at night, and eating whatever was left from the school cafeteria because groceries became a luxury. Still, she didn't complain. Her friends posted engagement rings and beach vacations. Maya posted photos of her mom smiling at hospital, staff who no longer remembered her name. And when her dad passed away suddenly, a heart attack during a night shift, and it broke something inside her that never fully healed. That day, she stood in their small kitchen, the same one where he'd made her pancakes every Saturday, and realized the only person left to hold everything together was her. So she did. She sold her dad's truck to pay for her mom's care. She moved her into a nursing home closer to Chicago, even though it meant extra hours on the train and less time to sleep. Her world became a rotation of school, hospital, home. Repeat. Dreams? Those went on pause. Love? Out of the question. The last time she'd gone on a date, she'd fallen asleep halfway through dessert. But here's the thing about people like Maya. They survive on quiet hope. Even when life keeps handing them storms, they somehow find umbrellas made of grace. By 28, she was exhausted physically, financially, emotionally, but still smiling for her students, still calling her mom every night, even if her mom no longer remembered her voice. And that's when she met Daniel Whitmore. He wasn't from her world, not even close. Daniel was the kind of man who wore confidence like a tailored suit. Son of billionaire real estate mogul Richard Whitmore, he'd grown up in penthouses and private schools. But he wasn't arrogant. He was curious, especially about people who didn't chase power. They met at a charity event where Maya was volunteering. Daniel had been dragged there by his assistant and looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, until she spilled orange punch all over his designer shirt. He laughed. She apologized too many times. He said, "If that's the worst thing that happens to me tonight, I'll call it a win." And that's how it started. A friendship that felt like sunlight breaking through rain. He loved her groundedness. She loved that he listened without trying to fix things. He took her to places she'd only seen in magazines, art galleries, rooftop dinners, but never made her feel small. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not for what she could give, but for who she was. Still, Maya struggled with guilt. Every date, every small joy felt borrowed, like happiness she hadn't earned yet. Because while she was falling in love, her mom was forgetting her name entirely. One night, after visiting her mom, Maya sat in her car and stared at her phone for an hour before texting Daniel. "Sometimes I wish life came with a pause button," he replied. "Sometimes it does. It's called a hug." That was the night she knew she loved him. But love wasn't the end of her struggles. It was the beginning of new ones, because Daniel's world came with expectations. His family was old money, formal dinners, silent judgments, smiles with teeth. His mother, elegant and distant, once said to Maya, "You're lovely, dear." So simple, simple. That word haunted her. Daniel defended her every time, but she could see it. The raised brows, the polite curiosity of rich people wondering what the poor girl was doing at their table. And then came the dinner invitation that would change everything. "Father wants to meet you. Richard Whitmore, billionaire, widower, philanthropist, a man whose opinion could make or break Daniel's future." Maya panicked for days, practiced answers, researched his company, even read a book called Conversations That Impress Powerful People. It wasn't about money. It was about respect. She wanted to prove she belonged, not because of who she was dating, but because of who she was. But behind all that effort was something deeper, a fear she'd carried since childhood, the fear of not being enough. The girl from Ohio who'd lost her father, her savings, and almost her spirit, still believed she had to earn her place in every room she entered. And so, on that chilly morning, when she dressed in her neat blue coat and boarded the train to the Whitmore mansion, she wasn't just traveling across the city. She was crossing the invisible line between two worlds. She didn't know that life was about to test the very thing she valued most, her kindness. Because sometimes, destiny hides in moments that look like inconvenience. And for Maya Brooks, Destiny was sitting outside a train station, holding a cardboard sign, shivering in the cold. That morning felt like the kind of morning where everything could go right or fall apart in an instant. The city was still waking up. The air was crisp, the kind that bites your nose but makes you feel alive. Maya walked fast, clutching her portfolio and a container of homemade pasta salad, her emergency lunch. She checked her watch again. 9:17. She had exactly 43 minutes to make it across town, freshen up, and pretend she wasn't terrified of meeting one of the most powerful men in Chicago. Every step echoed with the voice of doubt she'd carried since childhood. Don't mess this up, Maya. People like them notice everything, but fate has a way of testing people at the exact moment they're trying to prove themselves. Just as she exited the train station, she saw him, sitting against the wall, shoulders hunched under a tattered military jacket. His face was half hidden beneath a wool cap, beard streaked with gray, and a cardboard sign rested against his knees. Army vet, hungry, trying to get home. He looked like he'd been invisible for a long time, the kind of man the world walks past without even a glance. Maya slowed down. Her brain whispered, "You can't stop. You'll be late." But her heart said he's someone's dad, someone's son. For a moment, she just stood there, torn between two worlds, the one she was trying to earn her place in and the one she came from. She sighed, opened her bag, and took out her lunch. "Hey," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "You hungry?" The man looked up slowly, eyes tired but alert. "Ma'am, you don't have to—" "I know," she interrupted gently, "but I want to." She handed him the container and her coffee cup. His hands trembled as he accepted it. "Haven't had real food in 2 days," he muttered. Maya smiled. "Then I guess today's your lucky day." He chuckled weakly. There was something about his voice, rough but kind. As he ate, she noticed details. The way he said ma'am, the faint scar on his hand, the quiet dignity even in his exhaustion. He wasn't begging. He was surviving. When she stood to leave, he looked up again. "Miss, yeah, not many people stop. You got a good heart. Don't lose it." She smiled, waved, and hurried off, unaware that those words would echo louder than any lecture she'd ever heard. By the time she reached the subway again, she was already late. Her phone buzzed, a message from Daniel. "Daniel, Dad's ready early. Please don't be late." He values punctuality more than God. Maya's stomach twisted. Of course he was early. Of course today, of all days. She grabbed the next cab she could find. The driver, an older woman with pink sunglasses and zero sense of urgency, seemed determined to stop at every red light in Chicago. Maya chewed her lip, silently praying for traffic miracles. The city skyline flashed by, towers of glass and steel that reminded her how small she really was. By the time she reached the gates of the Whitmore estate, she was 30 minutes late. She paid the driver, stepped out, and froze. The mansion wasn't just big, and it was imposing. Wide lawns, stone pillars, and a driveway that looked longer than her entire hometown. 2 guards at the entrance gave her a look that said she didn't belong. She straightened her shoulders and smiled anyway. Fake confidence. Her last defense mechanism. Inside, the butler led her to a parlor where Daniel and his mother, Evelyn, waited. "Finally," Evelyn said with a practiced smile. "Traffic?" Maya nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I'm so sorry for the delay." "Ah, Chicago traffic," Evelyn said, sipping tea. Always the perfect excuse. Daniel shot his mother a warning glance. Maya tried to steady her breathing. Then Evelyn said, "Father's already in the dining hall. He doesn't like to wait." Maya's pulse quickened. "Should I—" "Yes, go in," Daniel said gently, squeezing her hand. "He'll love you." She wanted to believe him. As she followed the butler down the long corridor, her mind ran through every possible conversation starter. Should she compliment his foundation work? Mention her students? Quote something smart? But the second the doors opened, all of that vanished, because sitting at the far end of the grand table, dressed in an elegant suit, was the same man she had met outside the train station, the same man she'd given her lunch to. Her mind froze. Her lungs forgot how to work. He didn't react right away. He just looked at her. Really looked. A flicker of recognition passed across his face, followed by something unreadable. For one dizzy moment, she thought maybe she'd imagined it. Maybe it just looked like him. Maybe? Then he smiled. That same small, tired, knowing smile. And the ground beneath her seemed to tilt. Dinner was a blur of awkward silence and half-hearted small talk. Evelyn led most of the conversation about family foundations, global investments, and some charity gala in Monaco. Maya barely spoke. Her hands trembled under the tablecloth. Every time she tried to meet Richard's eyes, she saw the sidewalk again, his torn gloves, his trembling hands, the shame in his voice. She couldn't make sense of it. Was he testing her? Was it some cruel social experiment? Or had she just stumbled into the most bizarre coincidence of her life? Then came the next wave of confusion. Daniel didn't seem to know anything. He was chatting about their engagement plans like nothing was wrong, which meant one thing. Richard hadn't told him, and that made everything worse. Halfway through dinner, Evelyn said sweetly, "Maya, dear, where did you say you grew up again?" Ohio," Maya said. "Small town near Dayton." "How quaint," Evelyn replied. "And your parents?" "My mom's, in assisted care. My dad passed away." "Oh," Evelyn said softly, pretending sympathy. "How tragic." Then after a sip of wine, "But you've really done well for yourself considering." Daniel's fork clattered against his plate. "Mother," Maya smiled tightly. "It's okay." But inside something cracked. Because considering was just a fancy way of saying you don't belong here, and yet across the table Richard said nothing. He just watched. Calm. Silent. The same way he'd watched people walk past him that morning. After dinner, Evelyn excused herself to take a call. Daniel followed her out to make peace. That left Maya alone with Richard. For a long moment, they just sat there, the ticking of a grandfather clock filling the silence. Then he spoke, voice lower now, warmer. "You have good instincts," he said. Maya blinked. "Sir? This morning?" "You didn't hesitate." Her heart stuttered. So it was him. He leaned back, studying her. "I wanted to see what kind of person my son was marrying. Money can buy everything except compassion." She didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or faint. You were testing me?" He nodded slowly. "In a way. But the truth is I wasn't supposed to test you." "You tested me." She frowned. He continued. "I forgot what humility felt like." "You reminded me." Her throat tightened. "You shouldn't have to pretend to be homeless to feel human." He smiled faintly. "You're right. Maybe I needed to be reminded of that." For the first time that night, she saw something beyond his wealth. A man carrying invisible weight, maybe even regret. He stood and extended his hand. "Welcome to the family, Miss Brooks." Maya hesitated, then shook it, half in disbelief, half in awe. Outside, snow began to fall, soft, silent. The world felt still again, like the kind of moment that divides before and after. That night, as Maya rode home alone, she replayed everything. The train station, the table, the test she never knew she was taking. Her phone buzzed, a message from Daniel. "Daniel, Dad said he's never seen him smile like that before." "What did you do?" Maya stared at the screen, smiling to herself. Nothing, she thought. I just stopped to help, but deep down she knew it wasn't nothing. It was everything. She stood outside the private dining room of the Darlington, clutching her purse, heart pounding like a drum line in her chest. A hostess smiled politely, opening the door to a table where everything gleamed, crystal glasses, silver cutlery, and a billionaire whose face she hadn't forgotten, the same face she had seen just 3 hours earlier, wrapped in a tattered scarf, trembling under the rain, asking quietly, "Spare change, ma'am?" Her breath caught in her throat. It couldn't be. But it was Mr. William Darlington, her fiancé's father, the man she was late to meet. The man she was supposed to impress was the same homeless veteran she had given her last sandwich to. And now, He was staring back at her, eyes slightly narrowed, as if testing her. "Ah, finally," he said, voice cool and composed, betraying none of the morning's desperation. "You must be Elena." Her fiancé, Nathan, rose from his chair, his smile awkward and thin. "Dad, this is the woman I've been telling you about." William's gaze lingered on her trembling hands before he gestured for her to sit. "Yes, I think we've already met." Briefly. The words sliced through her like cold glass. Nathan blinked. "What do you mean?" William leaned back. "Nothing important. Let's just say I had the opportunity to see her. Character. Earlier today," Elena's mind spiraled. Should she speak up? Should she admit what happened? But how could she? Would Nathan believe her? That the billionaire who owned half the city was the same man she found on a street corner wearing a torn army jacket? Dinner was torture. Every course was a test. William's questions came sharp and surgical. "So, Elena, tell me, what's your view on loyalty?" She fumbled. "Loyalty? Matters more than status, sir. More than appearances." His eyebrow arched, almost amused. "Does it now?" Every answer felt like walking on shards of glass. She could feel Nathan's discomfort, his father's quiet, deliberate dominance. But underneath that billionaire poise, Elena saw something else. Shame. Recognition. A secret begging to stay buried. Finally, dessert arrived, untouched. William folded his napkin. "Nathan, would you mind giving me a moment with your fiancé?" Nathan hesitated, then nodded and stepped out. The silence that followed was suffocating. William looked straight at her. "You didn't recognize me when you walked in, did you?" Her throat tightened. I wasn't sure." He gave a small, tired smile. "Good. That tells me you're not the type who helps for recognition." Tears welled in her eyes. "Why were you out there? On the street?" His face darkened, the charm slipping. "Because sometimes, Miss Carter, the world's richest man needs to know if those around him have hearts. Or only ambitions." Her stomach dropped. "You were testing me?" He nodded slowly. "And you passed." Her pulse thundered in her ears. Anger, disbelief, relief, all colliding at once. "This was all a test?" she said, voice breaking. "You humiliated me. I was late because of you. You made me look irresponsible." William didn't flinch. "No, I made you seen. The world doesn't need more people chasing wealth, Elena. It needs more people who'd still stop in the rain for a stranger." For a long moment, neither spoke. The billionaire and the woman he tested, both stripped of pretense, both raw with truth. Finally, he sighed, eyes softening. Nathan could have chosen anyone. But today, I learned he chose right. When Nathan returned, William rose and extended his hand to Elena. "Welcome to the family." But she didn't take it immediately. Instead, she looked at him, really looked, and said, "Next time you want to test someone's heart, maybe don't hide yours." A flicker of surprise crossed his face. Then, for the first time that night, he laughed, genuine, unguarded. Elena smiled faintly, the tension melting away. She had walked into that room terrified, desperate for approval. Now she walked out with something much more powerful: respect. And though the world would call this night a dinner for her, it was a reckoning. Because that was the moment Elena Carter stopped trying to be enough for others and started realizing she already was. Dear audience, if this part gripped you, give it a thumbs up. It really helps our channel grow and brings more inspiring stories to life. Elena never forgot that night. Not the rain, not the test, not the look in William Darlington's eyes when he said, "You passed." It would have been easy to walk away bitter, to let pride cloud her peace. But Elena had spent too many years surviving storms to let one strange evening break her spirit. Instead, she turned it into fuel, a story she'd carry for the rest of her life, one she'd one day tell to others who believed kindness was weakness. A month later, she received an invitation she didn't expect, an official letter embossed with the Darlington Foundation seal. "Dear Ms. Carter," it read, "we would like to formally invite you to join our philanthropic advisory board. Your insight and compassion are exactly what we need." She stared at the letter for a long time. It wasn't the money or the prestige that moved her. It was the line that said your compassion. Because for once, someone had valued not her resume, not her achievements, but her heart. The work wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the corporate dream she once imagined, sitting behind glass walls and power suits. But it was real. Elena began working with veterans, the same kind of people she'd stopped to help that rainy morning. She coordinated housing programs, meal plans, and job placement initiatives. Every face reminded her of William that day on the street. Not the billionaire, but the broken man behind the disguise. And though she'd once been desperate for his approval, now she found herself inspired by his transformation too. William Darlington had quietly shifted his empire's focus, pouring millions into rehabilitation programs for veterans. When the media praised him, he deflected. "It wasn't my idea," he said once during an interview. "It was hers." The clip went viral. The nation saw the story. A young woman who stopped to help a stranger. Unaware that stranger owned half the city, people called it the billionaire's lesson. Elena just called it Tuesday. Her relationship with Nathan deepened. But more importantly, her relationship with herself healed. For years, she'd lived with the belief that success meant approval. That if she worked hard enough, dressed well enough, smiled perfectly enough, she'd be chosen. Now she understood something deeper. The right people don't need to be impressed. They recognize you when the world doesn't. That revelation changed everything. Elena began mentoring young women, college students, single mothers, anyone who had ever been told, "You're too late," or "You're not enough." She taught them about professional courage, emotional intelligence, and the quiet power of empathy in a world obsessed with appearances. Her small online mentorship group grew into a nonprofit, the Second Glance Project. Its mission? To help people see the unseen in others and in themselves. Within 2 years, it expanded nationwide. She didn't seek fame, but it found her anyway. A news outlet featured her as the woman who changed a billionaire's heart. She laughed when she saw the headline. Because the truth was, it wasn't about changing him. It was about changing how the world saw kindness. One autumn evening, 3 years after that dinner, Elena stood backstage at a charity gala hosted by the Darlington Foundation. The room was packed with veterans, volunteers, and business leaders. Cameras flashed. When the host introduced her, she took a deep breath and stepped into the spotlight. Her speech was simple. No glamour, no theatrics. Just truth. "I once thought success was about being on time," she began, her voice steady. "But sometimes life delays you for the right reasons. I was late the night I met a man who taught me that real wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in decency." The crowd fell silent. Even William, sitting in the front row, dabbed his eyes behind his glasses. After the event, he approached her quietly. "You remind me of the person I used to be before I started chasing numbers," he said. "Thank you for giving me back that part of myself." She smiled. "You gave me something too. A reason to never doubt the power of a small act." They stood there for a moment, two people once separated by wealth, now connected by gratitude. Today, Elena lives a life that doesn't need to be proved. Her mornings start with coffee and calm, not rush and anxiety. Her evenings end with purpose, not exhaustion. She still passes by that same street corner sometimes, the one where she first met him. Only now it's different. Where once stood a man in rags, there's now a community kitchen funded by the Darlington Foundation. A plaque at the entrance reads, "Dedicated to those who stopped when the world told them to hurry." Elena runs her fingers over the words every time she visits. And each time she feels the same quiet truth whisper back to her. You were never late. You were right on time. Her story became one that people shared to remind themselves that kindness isn't weakness, it's timing. That sometimes life delays your plans not to punish you, but to prepare you for something bigger. And while the world saw her as the woman who impressed a billionaire, Elena knew the real story. She didn't win anyone's approval. She rediscovered her own worth. Now, when young people ask her how she got where she is, she smiles softly and says, "I stopped." That's it. When everyone else was rushing to be seen, I stopped to see. Because the day she paused for a stranger in the rain, was the day her life truly began. Thanks for watching, story lovers. If this story touched your heart, give it a like and share it with someone who needs hope today. And remember, sometimes the best moments in life happen when you're running